Both sides. So it's coming.
Wonderful.
It's coming. Not gonna make that
Okay,
chance we don't-
folks, I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the June 13th, 2012 meeting of the Resource Management and Administration Committee of the Grand Traverse County Board. And if we could start with the Pledge of Allegiance, excuse me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And would the clerk please call the roll, please?
Commissioner Gilman,
Here.
Inman,
Here.
Henschel,
Yes.
Lemkool,
Here.
Thomas,
Yep.
Fleece,
Present.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Richardson.
Here.
Very good timing.
Good.
And Commissioner Christine Maxbauer is absent because of a medical issue. And the first item would be the approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Okay, this would be a motion to approve the May 9th regular session minutes.
So moved.
Oh, I have a motion already. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Then we have the closed session minutes of May 9th.
So moved.
Have a motion by
Support.
Thomas, support by Fleece. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Motion carries. If you could hand those minutes in, please. Okay, this brings us to our first opportunity for public comment. And there will be another opportunity at the end of the meeting, and we will make opportunities for the public to comment on specific issues as we go through the meeting. So again, if the clerk could read the rules of public comment.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4 Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and should not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Okay, Mr. Gilman?
Jason Gilman, 933 Avenue D, and County Commissioner, District 1. I have decided this year to try for the position of state representative in the Republican primary. I have a concern that their citizens' needs are not being met in certain ways, particularly in areas of private property protections, and also in areas where we're wasting money through corporate welfare gimmicks and other areas where taxes, for example, being raised on seniors without looking at cost savings first. I expect to prevail, and I expect to be in communication with this board, and I expect to represent the community in a way that's much more in line with what the community would like. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. And that brings us to the approval of the agenda. Motion?
Move for approval as presented.
Okay,
Support.
Okay, I have a motion by Inman, support by Fleece. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we have a special order of business tonight, which is a presentation by Andy Knott of the Watershed Center on the Boardman River Watershed Prosperity Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. While I'm here from the Watershed Center. That's where I work. I actually am here representing a larger, more diverse leadership team for this new plan called the Boardman River Watershed Plan. I won't go through all the members of the team. They're on the fact sheet that was in your packet, but as you'll see from this presentation, we're trying to develop a new long-term plan for the river and its watershed that looks at not just environmental issues, but also economic and community issues too. So we have the Traverse City Area Chamber of Commerce, Traverse Area Association of Realtors, the county's been involved. Dennis Oloya was participating in meetings, and Dean's been to at least one or two in the last few weeks, and we certainly intend to engage Mr. Bendo when he settles in. But this all started, it sort of started around the time that this commission and the city commission decided to remove the dams. There were folks who were asking, what's the long-term plan for the watershed? Because once the dams are gone, it's going to be a major change. And so we decided that we probably needed a new sub-watershed plan for the Boardman, but we also realized that it shouldn't just be the same old type of plan that only looks at environmental issues. It ought to look at economic and social issues too. So this is a map of the watershed. You're all probably pretty familiar with it. Big chunk of Grand Traverse County as well as Kalkaska County. These are some of the facts about the watershed. It's 291 square miles. A third of the surface flow to Grand Traverse Bay comes from the Boardman River. It's the second largest sub-watershed in our Grand Traverse Bay watershed. The Elk River Chain of Lakes is larger. About 2/3 of the flow to the bay comes through the Elk River Chain of Lakes. There's a lot of public land in the watershed. There's a lot of high-quality water resources, and there's a lot of wildlife in the watershed. There's also a pretty robust economy, largely recreational, tourism, forestry, ags, oil and gas production. There are 2,400 businesses in the watershed, and the taxable value of the commercial property in the watershed exceeds $590 million. So there are a lot of opportunities in the watershed for because of the water and land recreation. There's a lot of, not just the river, but there are a lot of trails in the watershed. There's hiking, biking, skiing, horse trails. The river itself is one of the state's top 10 trout streams. 36 miles of the river are considered a blue ribbon trout stream. There's a quote here from trails.com that talks about the benefits and really all the opportunities that the Boardman presents. It's really one of the better rivers in the Lower Peninsula. So again, we want to bring together all these various aspects of the community in terms of this new plan, economic, social, and environmental planning. It would identify current and potential problems in the watershed. It would identify local solutions that leverage the region's resources and would build partnerships. And we've already done a lot of partnership building by bringing all these diverse interests to the table who are all supporting this plan. This is I'm not going to go over everything in detail because I know you guys have a lot on your agenda tonight, but these are the things that we typically look at in terms of the natural assets of the area, but we'll also look at the economic assets. What are long-term protection goals for the watershed? How can we create businesses and jobs in the watershed? And then a framework for actually implementing the plan, because that's a lot more important than just planning. It will be, as with other watershed plans, it will be approved by the DEQ and the EPA, and that's important because that helps bring in funding to do implementation activities. We'll have a group of engaged stakeholders at the end of this process. There will be strategies for, again, leveraging all those resources. It does also sort of pick up where where the Grand Vision left off in terms of focusing more on, again, prosperity for the region. We also want it to be a national model for how do you integrate environment and economic prosperity together. Of course, it follows the decision on the dams, and it also builds on a lot of community engagement around the dams and the Grand Vision. These are just some of the questions that we're going to be asking we have some public meetings coming up. You have a color flyer, I think, in your packet about these meetings at the end of the month. These are just examples of things that may come out of this in terms of what are the most important uses of the watershed, protection of habitat and wildlife, more trails and paddling opportunities, what are the new business opportunities that can maybe be leveraged with all the ecological assets of the watershed, and then what about improvements to community spaces, public access, for example, too. Again, this is a question that will be asked, and these are some of the things that may come up in terms of what are the biggest threats to maintaining and protecting those uses. These are fairly typical in a watershed plan, but we're going to be asking these, looking for also threats to or barriers to business or economic growth in the watershed. Just some examples. So to get involved, I also should mention that the leadership team has hired a team of consultants to help us out with this. The public sector consultants out of Lansing is the lead. Also, Beckett and Rader is an economics. They're doing the economic work for the plan, and then Lawton Gallagher Group here in Traverse City is doing the communications work for the plan. But you can contact me if you want more information, or Shanna Draheim is the project manager for public sector. And then lastly, again, these are the meetings coming up. They're open houses. They will be at the Kalkaska Library on June 26th, starting at 4:30. That's a Tuesday. On Wednesday, the 27th of June, at the Boardman Nature Center, also starting at 4:30. And then Thursday, the 28th, at Ranch Rudolph, starting at 5. And again, these are going to be open house formats. There will be several stations set up in these meetings where the public can come and talk with experts and members of the leadership team on various issues. There will also be opportunities for the public to provide input at the meetings so that we can build on that interest and that public input in terms of further working on the plan. There will be more public meetings in the fall. I think in September is what we're shooting for. And we're hoping that the plan will be completed early in 2013. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Jason?
This is not at all directed at you, Andy. I just have to. I have to say this because for the benefit of the board, so they understand all of the big picture, all of the things in play. Much of this is driven not from local efforts, but from efforts outside of our community. I went to the Ranch Rudolph presentation. The only other commissioner there was Commissioner Lemkool, and it was an interesting engineering plan. I think he did a fine job in presenting the plan. What's going to happen with, for example, the silt and what's left over after the dams are removed, or at least in this case, or in that case, it was the Brown Bridge. But that's going to have a cost that is not yet known. Okay, I mean we've made a lot of these decisions without knowing the long-term costs of what is going to happen, not only financially and long-term legacy costs to our community, but also ecologically. And I know that when some of these dams go, we are removing wetlands. We are removing areas where people have brought their kids to learn. These areas are not going to be there anymore. And the kids, they're going to be long gone and grown and gone away by the time any of this heals. I mean, we're talking a long process, 30 to 50 years as far as a healing time. Okay, that's great. It took 80 years or 100 years for us to get here, but part of the problem is keeping people away from our resources, and our resources being able to use the water, use the dams. He talks about prosperity. Grand vision equals prosperity. The grand vision doesn't mean equal prosperity. The grand vision simply means you're going to restrict the activities of people to a point so that certain things are kept sustainable, okay? And that comes from an outside place. And let me just read something. This is online. This is searchable. I could give anybody here a link to this, and I just want to read this. This is from the United Nations. This is on the United Nations site. Even prior to the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, but particularly since the adoption of Agenda 21, I mean, they call it what it is what it is, many local authorities and their LGOs have focused on the unique challenge of governance for sustainable development at the local level. Sustainable development is achieved by steering local development activities to simultaneously achieve three objectives: increased social welfare, greater and more equitably distributed local economic wealth. I mean, what does that sound like? And then one more thing, it says enhanced integrity of local ecosystems, which means less access to our resources. And there, I've got pages here, I'm not going to read it all. There's just too much here and it just makes me mad. On the fact sheet that Andy's provided, and we talk about the Grand Vision. The Grand Vision, the guy who started the Grand Vision, who started the process, he came from Oregon. He did it out in Oregon. That's not from around here. I looked here, and I looked all through the list of people who were involved, these stakeholders. They talk about stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Okay, there's Grand Traverse County, Kalkaska, Downtown Development, City of Traverse City, Chamber of Commerce, Land Conservancies, Watersheds, DTE, Conservation Resource. Nowhere in this list of about 20 of these stakeholders is property owners. Nowhere in this list of stakeholders are people who have what they thought was normal for them. You know, they're not on here. They don't have a voice. And what happens is the whole process, as it goes, you've got people who are paid to do what they do, and they're going to keep plodding forward, slowly and surely. And the guy who has to work for a living can't make it to every meeting, and sometimes the meetings stack on each other. And these visioning processes, you can say, well, they could have gone to the visioning process. These visioning processes are steered. You know, I'll tell you, it's a shame that this community got suckered in by this Grand Vision stuff. It really is. And this is a part of it. And it's happening now, and I think it's a bad thing. So it's my 2 cents.
Any other comments, questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
It keeps coming up about the Boardman being a blue ribbon trout stream.
Mm-hmm.
What is a blue ribbon trout? Who awards these blue ribbons?
I believe it's the state of Michigan. I'm not an expert on that, but I believe it's the state DNR.
Okay,
but
thank you.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Andy, I think we had to approve that designation as a county commission.
Okay.
So we
A
decided
number of
it
years
was
ago.
blue ribbon?
Or maybe you guys were a
I think
part of
there's a
that.
criteria by which it has to meet. It has to have so much gallon in each flow, it has to have some, the water temperature has to be within certain ranges in order
Right.
to qualify. And I don't recall what it is. I didn't remember that we had to approve it.
I don't remember that either.
But I do know that there's a criteria that the river has to meet as far as natural characteristics to qualify.
Thanks.
Any member of the public?
I certainly don't remember what they are.
Any comments?
I don't even remember.
Andy, thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope that you all can make it to one of these meetings at the end of the month. So, appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, that brings us to the consent calendar.
purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. 1, Resource Recovery Manager's Report, Grand Traverse County District Monthly Report, Road Commission Monthly Report.
Cite the number when you say you.
Sure, yeah. No, that's fine. 3, Road Commission Monthly Report. 4, Department of Human Services Board Appointment Procedures, State Appointment. 5, Commission on Aging Monthly Report, June, Public Health and Safety. 6, Veteran Services Monthly Report, June, Public Health and Safety. B, Approval, 2012 hauler license approval for Anita C. Silverman, RLA, LLC, PAR Wright, and Honeydews. 2, 2012-2013 Victims' Rights Agreement. 3, AAA Grant for Traffic Safety for June Public Health and Safety. 4, Resolution opposing rate increases for private agencies, supervision, foster care.
Okay, is there any member of the public that would like to have any of these items removed for further discussion? Seeing none, is there any member of the commission? Sonny?
I would like to just pull Resource Recovery Manager's report, just so we can talk about the timeline for the ordinance amendment.
Okay. Jason?
B4, please.
Okay. Anyone else? Then I would,
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to...
wait a minute, Larry.
Okay.
I would also like to pull A6 just for a brief comment.
A6?
B1.
And B1. Okay, so...
B1.
So we've pulled A1, A6, B1, and B4, is that correct?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended.
Support.
Okay, I have a motion by Inman, support by Thomas. Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Lemkool?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Blease?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes. Okay, so that brings us then to the consent. Let me see how this is set up here.
Items removed.
Items removed.
Yes, we're going to do items removed now, aren't we? Okay. Well, sometimes it's further. Go ahead.
Okay, I'd just like to speak to the fact that I pulled the Resource Recovery Manager's report because, as you all know, and I've reported to you repeatedly, we've done a complete rewrite of Ordinance 17 in compliance with the new solid waste plan that's been approved. That ordinance has been published in the Record Eagle on June 3rd. At that point, we have a 45-day public input process requiring a public hearing, and then we'll end the public hearing, and then the Board of Commissioners will approve this ordinance. This ordinance, unlike the solid waste plan, does not have to go out to all of the townships for their approval because it's a county ordinance, but they still have to be given opportunity to have input for it along with the public. So the public comment period started on June 4th, 2012. We're going to schedule a public hearing at this Board of Commissioners Resource Recovery meeting on July 11th. On the 18th, the 45 days will be up, and we will take a final vote on the proposed amendment at the Board of Commissioners meeting on the 25th of July. I just wanted to make the public completely aware of the time frame, and the commissioners, if anyone has any questions. I think if you had the opportunity to read the amendment and you've read the old ordinance, you'll be very impressed with what's been done with it. It's just much easier, much cleaner, and it's very distinct in defining what we do regulate and how we regulate it. And with that, I would make a motion to receive and file the Resource Recovery Manager's report.
Second.
I have a motion by Wheelock and support by Henschel. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, then the next item is A6. This is one that I took off, and it's just a comment I wanted to make on the Veteran Services Monthly Report. If you look at page 44 of your packet, it talks about the scheduled appointments through March of 2012. And at the top there, it says, current time to get a new appointment is 30-plus days. When I first came on this commission 3 years ago, I think it was 7 to 14 days was the waiting period. Now we're up over 30, and if you look at the very far side of that, the graph, it shows that our appointments this year are already ahead of the pace from last year, which was the biggest year in recent history in terms of the number of appointments that we had. And of course, as we demobilized from Afghanistan, I can only assume that it's going to get worse. So as we approach the budget, this is just a little heads up, I guess, to my fellow commissioners. As we approach the budget this year, I think we better start thinking about whether we're providing enough resources there to get, these people, the veterans, the services they need. So,
Okay.
with that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Larry.
I sit on the Veterans Board, and when they're talking 30-plus days, the only exception to this rule is if it's indeed a true emergency. But otherwise, you've got a veteran that walks into that office so the public understands, and they're entitled to these benefits. They've served their country, and we, in Grand Traverse County, because of the influx of veterans we have, and we also service Linlaw County on a contractual basis, which those figures are included in here. But that 30-plus days is a long time to just be able to talk about some benefits that you'd like to apply for. And then, once they're applied for, you're talking a lengthy period before you even receive the benefits. And I'll give you, this is really a far-sighted example. True story, and it happened last year. 12 years ago, this veteran applied for benefits. And they went through the process, went through the process, went through the process. 12 years. His first check, he's a resident of Grand Traverse County, was for in excess of $300,000. And he gets like $5,000 a month. Here he went all those years because of the bureaucracy in Lansing, waiting, and it's pretty obvious that if a veteran is entitled to those type benefits, he receives some pretty serious injuries. So consequently, I agree with the chairman, and I told the board here, I believe at last month's meeting, that I don't like seeing even this delay now, and rather than wait until the first of the year, I asked them to put together a packet and to make a presentation here on the board, because perhaps we could adjust some of this, because this is absolutely absurd way to treat our men and women of the armed forces who are veterans. Thank you.
Well, yeah, just hold a minute. Is there any other, Sonny?
I guess the only comment I make, and I'm certainly more than willing to have discussion about shortening this time frame, but I think we need to also recognize that even though our wait is 30 days, the national average and the state average is way longer than that. We are so far ahead of the curve, it's not even in the same ballpark. But yet, for us, we're appalled that we're at 30 days. So it's, I think that's a statement that's showing how dedicated this county is to making sure that we provide these services. Because I can tell you, there's a lot of counties in the state of Michigan and communities throughout the country that if they had a 30-day wait, that's really good.
Yeah.
And we're not there.
Right. And of course, and the reason I brought it up is that the trend's going in the wrong direction. And we even added, not a lot, but I think it was 2 years ago, we added a small amount of staff to try to help deal with it. And, we're still losing ground. Go ahead, Jason.
Now, understanding there's a lot of privacy concerns as well, do we have any kind of established volunteer apparatus that could help guide them, so that, it streamlines those who really need the help first?
The true emergencies, when they come in or they call, if they have a true emergency and they have methodology that they determine if it's a true emergency, and if it is, those people are put right in front and they get taken care of that day or the day after. But like the funds, for example, the emergency funds to help people out in need, the veterans while they're waiting for some of the benefits to kick in, we're gonna go way over top of that. The burial is another one that we're gonna exceed. But we do need to look at it seriously, and they've looked at volunteers like to sit at the desk or try and help. You have to be certified. See, this is all computer operations, and you have to be, like Jamie Beeman's the latest one to get certification. You have to be certified to even get into the computer, and if you're not certified, you can't cheat. You know, you can't use somebody else's computer. And what Sonny said is true. But Benzie County, for example, and not to knock them or anything, but their office is open 4 hours a week. So consequently, you get somebody that's in a pinch, a Benzie County resident, where do they come? They come here. Linlock County years ago, I think it was 13 years ago, decided to contract with Grand Traverse County, and they pay us roughly, it's on a per share basis, but it comes out to like $36,000, and Mr. Bott and his department are the ones that figure out what that balance is. See, and we change, you know, when the contract comes up, then if it needs to go up, it goes up. But they've been a good partner in this.
Mr. Chair, I would move to receive and file the Veteran Services Monthly Report.
Second. Motion by Henschel, second by Inman. Mr. Merrick?
Andy Merrick, 2875 East Railroad Avenue. I had the pleasure of attending the Veteran Services meeting last month, and they were talking about needing additional funding. And they were very cautious or concerned about coming to the board, given, you know, the budget status that you guys have now. It's difficult to come up with extra money. But their demand for their services is exceeding what it did last year, and their budget is just a little bit more than it was last year. I don't remember the numbers exactly. But they were talking about having to come to the board for some money to provide services for our veterans who fought for our country, and they're concerned about coming to ask for too much money. So when they do come, they're coming very conservatively for what their needs really are. They don't want to come and ask for more than they have to, but I think that they're concerned to come and not ask for enough to get our veterans the services they need. So I hope when they do come, you ask them, is this going to be enough? Because there is concern on their part about, you know, getting turned down by the board because of the other budgetary constraints that we have as a county. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Larry, you know, I think Benzie County is all run by volunteers, and I don't know how they get certified, but I know, you know, my father-in-law used to sit on that, and they were very proud of the service that they were providing for the people in Benzie County. So, you know, there is a way. There's got to be a way to use volunteers, because Benzie County is not the only county that's using volunteers. You know, we are one of the few that do operate a paid staff, and fortunate to us because we are providing a top quality service. But don't knock the service that they're getting in other counties when they're done by volunteers, because they're very proud of what they're doing.
No, that wasn't my intent.
Yeah, I
and I
understand.
said not to knock them.
Right.
You know, Wexford County is another one, but you have to look at the population of those counties. You know, Benzie County is I believe, around 12,000. Wexford's about 32,000. That's significant difference between
Right.
us and them.
And that's why we need a full-time staff.
Right,
Yeah.
but when you get somebody whose back's up against the wall, and they're a veteran, and they're trying, you know, they're trying to feed their family, they want to keep their home, can't make the mortgage payment, you know, they can't wait for that once a week or whatever the deal is, and they hit the Grand Traverse, and we did ask Chuck to do a study, because he does have the capability in the computers, to see how many residents were getting, say, from Wexford or Benzie or wherever.
Yeah. And I still think the state needs to come in and step up to what their responsibilities on some of our veterans, and I don't think they are. I don't think they've come in anywhere near providing services like they should.
Michigan is 47th out of 50 states to get the benefits out of Washington.
And we're top 10 states that have veterans.
Exactly, and Jason Allen, who is now in the chair down in Lansing, has really been trying to help that effort, to get more money out of Washington. The veterans really put in a lot, I forget the numbers, and I could certainly bring them our next meeting, but it's like 27 million they pump into this economy here. It's a large amount of money, plus the clinics.
All right, everybody understand the motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, and then we have B1. Was that you, Sonny?
No.
That was Rob.
Rob.
Rob, I'm sorry.
I just, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a comment. At the beginning of every meeting, we say the Pledge of Allegiance, and we include with liberty and justice for all. And that term liberty gets to be used more and more loosely now that we're licensing the ability to haul grass clippings. It just seems like, what are we going to license next? And I run a small business during the week, and well, every day actually. We sell gas, and just that last week alone, I got 2 new regulatory things. Now we have to have somebody certified, just like you have to have somebody safe served to sell food. Now you got to have somebody certified in underground storage tanks on the premise as a gas station. And in the same week, we got a whole new licensing thing from the state on selling bedding plans. It's just government's burden that we put on small business is it doesn't shrink, it grows. And of course, I'm gonna vote to approve these licenses, but I just wanted to bring that up and question: do we really need to license hauling grass clippings in our county? With that, I would move to approve the attached 2012 hauler licenses submitted by staff and authorize the signature of the Board of Commission Chair.
I'll support for discussion.
Okay.
Okay, I guess the comment that I would make, Rob, is that as part of the solid waste plan, it requires that anyone that is hauling solid waste, and that includes yard waste and grass clippings for hire, and taking them to a designated facility, has to be a licensed hauler. All of these people have been hauling solid or yard waste to the Keystone facility, owned and operated by Grand Traverse County, without a license. It's not fair for one of the landscapers to require that they are licensed and allow other people to bring their stuff for hire to our facility. If you choose to haul your yard waste or your neighbor's yard waste at no charge to them, to any designated facility, there is no license required. But if you are hauling solid waste of any kind as defined by our ordinance or our solid waste plan or by the state law to a designated facility, you are required to have a license. Grand Traverse County issues that license. The license fee is $50 a year, I believe. Okay?
You're describing the water I believe we're drowning in. Thank you.
All right, first Dick, and then Jason. You're okay,
I'm happy.
Jason?
Well, just, you raised a good point. Maybe we, I'm not going to go there now as far as changing that back, but boy, maybe when we're looking at these whole ordinances, we take a look at the effect. Does it really matter if the organics are hauled around? And frankly, if it matters, then why doesn't it matter for the homeowner who has absolutely no interest, doesn't care whether or not he's moving Phragmites around, for example, or some other invasive element. I don't know. It doesn't really follow. It just seems like we're trying to keep our hands on the heads of business, a little bit too much, or foot on the heads of the business. So I tend to agree with Commissioner Henschel, but of course we're going to approve these licenses and move forward.
Commissioner Fleets, did you have a comment?
Well, I too would question why we're doing that. Because I can understand us licensing people that haul chemicals, stuff that is dangerous to the environment. But I think all of that stuff isn't dangerous. And state law says you can't put it in a landfill anymore for several years now. So if people are hauling it, whether they're commercial or not commercial, to a facility where it is allowed, I don't understand, what's the $50 for? Are they receiving anything for the $50,
They're receiving regular reporting. They receive the regular reports as far as how much is taken in at each of the facilities and where it comes from.
That, stuff like that, and I agree with Henschel too, but it could get me on a tirade. I got so angry last week as a business owner, and, in 65 years, I've never wrote a letter to the governor, the senator, or the representative, but let me tell you, I sure did. And there's a lot of things I'm beginning to really not understand what's going on in our state here, and the expense, like Rob said so correctly, to business owner. In my case, happened to be unemployment insurance. Quick snapshot. Employees laid off January 1st, called back to work April 1st. He says, I don't want to come back. I'm moving down to Kalamazoo, where he's got a new girlfriend. And I said, fine. So I tell one of the gals to write a letter to the employment agency, telling them to cut his thing off. The next thing I get, well, they cut him off. But then the next thing I got was a redetermination of a determination. And he is eligible because he didn't fraudulently say that he was leaving. He actually is going to move to Kalamazoo, which is too far to drive to Lark Lawn and Garden, okay? So I get all done with that, and I happen to look at the mailing address for this individual. He resides in Lake City, has for years. They're still dealing with him in Lake City. So my next question was, why is the employment agency dealing with him in Lake City if he now lives in Kalamazoo? But the expense to the business owner is crazy. And the PS on the bottom of the letter, please advise, and they will, but I may, after 38 years, become an employee instead of an employer, so I can enjoy the benefits of unemployment agency by just moving around a little bit.
Wait till you get your bill.
Commissioner Wheelock, is it safe to assume that hauler licenses are covered under Ordinance 17? So my comment would be for those of you, since we are in the middle of a public hearing process on Ordinance 17, if you want to make some changes,
Right.
then now would be the time. Okay. Commissioner Raymond?
Does it cost the center money to process this kind of yard waste, or what do they do? Just compost it, or what do they do with it?
Hire a full-time staff or part-time
Well,
person.
I don't know if this is the place or the time, but there is a part-time staff there that operates anytime that the brush drop-off site is open.
Okay.
We also spend a sizable amount of money. The last 2 years, American Waste has ground all of the brush at the end of the year and ground it into chips. And if I remember right, 8,000 yards last spring.
Can't quote you.
I think it was about 8,000 yards of brush that we had chipped last year, and that comes with a considerable fee. And people that actually drop off waste are charged, I think, I could be wrong because I don't work at the drop-off site regularly, other than I did some when we had the storm damage problem. I believe it's $5 a cubic yard of brush coming in and $1 for a bag of leaves.
Okay.
It's pretty minimal cost considering that we man the station and we maintain it, and we have the brush ground at the end of the year, which is a sizable expense.
Okay, all right. Answers my
Okay.
question.
We have a motion then to approve the hauler licenses. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Which brings us to B4, Commissioner Gilman.
I pulled this because it doesn't make any sense to me. And I know that we recently had a resolution, and this is simply a copy of that resolution from another county. I don't understand this well enough, and it's not an issue that's really relevant here, I don't think, for our county at this time. And I don't understand why it was in the consent calendar. I know somebody probably said, let's throw it in there, but I can't vote for this because it doesn't really involve us.
Well, the reason it's there is that it was, the resolution from, I believe it was Van Buren
Right,
County.
I think so, yeah.
Was just a receive and file. This is a,
Right.
resolution they passed. I think Commissioner Maxbauer pulled it off just to point out, her concern about, the fact that the 3750 was going to be raised. And that was fine, and we all agreed that that was, a bad thing, whatever. And then somebody said, well, let's not just receive and file it, let's pass our own resolution. So then that created let's put it on the RMA agenda for next month.
Well,
That's why it's here. But I don't disagree with you,
Yeah.
because I'm not sure I know enough about it to vote on it one way or the other.
there isn't enough information for me to make a reasoned yay or nay on this, really. I mean, I'll say nay in the absence of better information.
Okay, Commissioner Henschel, and then we'll talk to Dean.
I just wanted to remind Commissioner Gilman that you were the one that brought the right to work resolution, which was us encouraging the state. And I agreed then, and I agree with this here, that this is the place because this is the local voice of the people. Each of us was elected by a district of the people, and us saying, agreeing with certain matters, it does send a message, I believe, and I believe it is taken into account by people at the state that may not, get back here that often or have that much contact with their constituents like we might.
I did not have, and I should, and I apologize for speaking out of turn. I did not necessarily have a problem with receiving and filing the other resolution. That was not my issue. And in fact, I don't know if I agree or disagree with this. That isn't the problem. I knew enough about the right to work to bring that forward. This I don't know enough about. I don't know the story about the 5 children who were with a grandmother and an agency and what the extenuating circumstances are, so there's nothing I can agree with here.
Dean?
I think the last whereas, if you get into the middle of this, kind of explains why they're opposing it, but this does have some impact on our child care fund. I can't tell you the dollar cost or if we have a significant number of private agency placements, but the county, through the appropriation to the child care fund, would bear 50% of this rate increase. So it does have an impact on our child care fund, and it therefore does have a bearing on the county cost to support that activity.
Yeah, I think that, I think this is one of those things that we probably should bring in the judge and maybe
That's what I was gonna suggest.
Department of Human Services had Dawn to come in and maybe explain this for maybe next month's meeting or next week's meeting or something.
Oh, in 2 weeks. when
Or
we
2
talk,
weeks.
Yeah.
So
And
that
I actually thought about calling Dawn, but I didn't get around to it.
Yeah.
so.
I mean,
But
I can
know
take this
what-
to our meeting, and the DHS meeting, but that would be after our regular meeting, so, or it'll be before.
I mean, honestly, this is,
Yeah.
what part of this is a privatization process
Right.
where they're taking the foster care responsibilities away from state employees and giving it to, private child care firms. But it seems like they raised the fees so high that it's hard to see where there's any money savings out of it.
But I think if we bring the judge in or ask Dawn to come in and maybe explain
That's where I
this.
was,
and
that's
then-
where I was gonna go.
What would be an appropriate motion then to move it?
Well, we have a motion?
Receive and
Oh,
file.
we
don't.
Make a motion.
We don't have a motion yet.
No, we don't
We
have
don't.
a
I
motion
would
yet.
move that this committee recommend the Board of Commission adopt the resolution in opposition of proposed rate increase for private foster care agencies, and also request staff, appropriate staff to be at the board meeting to further explain and answer questions.
I support that.
A cart before the horse?
It's just a recommendation from this committee to the Board of Commissioners that, upon consideration and asking any relevant questions, should be adopted.
Final approval will be at our
Okay,
board
okay.
meeting.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I guess at least from my perspective, I would like to have that discussion before I pass the motion to accept the resolution.
Absolutely.
You know, so, I don't know whether we'd be better off to pass the resolution as is proposed, or whether we'd better off to table this issue for a month until we, in fact, can have the information so we can make an educated decision. You know, I had no problem with receiving and filing Van Buren's thing a month ago, but when we're going to put Grand Traverse County's name on it, I want more information before this.
Okay, so is it your interest to just...
My interest would be to table this
defer
thing
this-
until
Defer this to July
until July, until we have proper information.
and invite the appropriate parties?
And
to
between
talk
now and
about
then,
that?
invite the appropriate parties, because I'm not prepared to pass this resolution tonight until I have more information.
I don't have a problem.
The motion is to recommend it bring it forward to the board meeting.
I
So-
just don't see us getting the proper information between now and the Board of Commissioners meeting at the end of the month.
So you want to take 4 weeks instead of 2, basically?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any rush on it.
I don't think there's a rush.
Okay, so you don't want to withdraw your motion?
He wants to make the motion, we'll vote on it. If it passes, it goes. If it doesn't, we'll have another motion to table.
You've already got a motion on the floor.
We do have a
Right.
motion on the floor, I know. Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the resolution. By roll call, please.
Commissioner Henschel?
Yes.
Lemkool?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Please?
Yes.
Wheelock?
No?
Yeoman?
No.
Inman?
No.
Chairman Richardson?
I will vote yes, and I think we can thrash this out in 2 weeks instead of 4 or 5. so.
Okay.
Motion passes. Okay, now that we're done with the consent calendar,
Jeez.
An hour later.
brings us to the Human Resources
easy.
Health Department Staffing Plan. Liz Seaman or Mr. Pugh?
Yeah, I'll let Jerry run with this one.
Jerry Pugh, Finance and Administrative Services Director, Acting Health Officer, Grand Traverse County Health Department. This is a project that we've been working on probably for very close to a year. Federal funds have become available for eligible providers to move agencies such as ours to the adoption of electronic medical records. So over the past year, we've kind of gone through a long and involved evaluation process to determine exactly how we wanted to proceed with this. We wanted to make sure that the software that we had now was proper to make this happen, and also that we came up with the right process to do this. So I guess just to give you a little background of what's transpired in the last year, our IT technician and myself went to a IT vendor fair last summer in Mount Pleasant, where there were a variety of products presented, and we saw some $500,000 software products that would be wonderful to have, but obviously not within our budget range. So anyhow, at that time we learned about this program and how it was going to roll out, and we actually have 5 providers that make us eligible for funding, and that funding is about $63,000 per provider, and it's paid over a 6-year period. So we have a substantial amount of money potentially available to do this. So I went to another conference in the fall where there was a presentation by another software vendor, Insight, that many local health departments throughout the state have adopted. Many departments were not as proactive as we were, where we went with Mitchell and McCormick some 10 years ago. Many of the departments were still using another product that was familiar with public health, which was CMHC. So with this incentive money out there, many of the other departments have gone with this Insight. So I thought it was important that we take a look at that. We had a group of 5 or 6 staff go down to Ottawa and Kalamazoo counties where we saw a couple of departments that were using this software, kind of took a look at it, saw that it potentially had some advantages, and, you know, we liked our software better in some respects. So then earlier this year, I think in February, we invited our current software vendor to the health department, pulled together our management team, and we also had a consultant from the state that's funded through these incentive dollars also, and looked at a presentation from our current software vendor, and basically, you know, came to the conclusion that there isn't, there isn't any reason that we can't do with our current software vendor exactly what we need to do, and at least save, some funds of not going out and purchasing new software. So over the past couple of months, we worked with the Human Resource Department to develop a job description for a position that would have a clinical background as well as some IT experience that would kind of spearhead this process for us. And we would use a big chunk of these funds to fund this position for a couple-year period. We anticipate that it would probably take about 2 years to fully implement this in all of our programs. And then after that, it would be some sort of maintenance effort that would be ongoing. So that's how we came to where we're at. We're requesting to add this full-time FTE clinical informatics position, which would be funded with these federal incentive dollars.
For 6 years.
The incentive funds are paid out over a period of 6 years. There are certain benchmarks over the course of those years. In the initial year, you receive $21,250 per provider, and then in years 2 through 5, assuming that you meet the benchmarks that are laid out, which aren't even all identified at this point in time, you'll receive an additional $8,500 per provider. We have already applied for the funds for 4 of our providers. We have a 5th one that we're eligible to apply for now. We have received $85,000 in funding to accomplish this as of this point in time.
Okay. Commissioner Fleets?
Jerry, if I understood you correctly, you said roughly each provider would be responsible in the neighborhood of $63,000,
Correct.
and there's 5 vendors.
5.
So
5
times
providers.
5, and payable for 6 years at that rate.
Correct.
So according to my calculation, this comes a little over $2 million. Would that be correct?
No, the $63,000 is total over the
total.
6-year period. So we're talking, $320,000.
$335,000, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry, I may have
I just
misspoke.
wanted to make sure I understood it correctly.
I wish it was that much, but as a taxpayer, I don't think that would be appropriate.
Commissioner Thomas? Did you have something?
I move to approve the 1.0 FTE.
Okay, support by Commissioner Levenpool. Commissioner Gilman, did you have a comment?
Yeah, what are we paying grade grade J
You
currently.
gotta get a second before you can discuss.
Oh, we got it.
He got a second.
Oh, we did? Okay, sorry.
Step one of grade J is $42,800.
And this position, this addition is a brand-new position of 1 FTE.
Correct.
And so, so we're going to spend $42,800 a year to, obviously enhance our health department, but also to be eligible for this roughly $325,000 that's going to be spent, that we're going to receive over the next 6 years. Let me ask you this. Is this money that obviously, this is necessary to get that money, correct? To have this position?
In year one, no, there's no requirements to have any position. You can utilize the funds to accomplish the benchmarks in any manner you determine. The requirement in year one is that you have a software that's been qualified by the federal government. They have to submit, to certain standards, and our software product is qualified to meet their requirements. So the $85,000 that we've gotten, it's ours to do, as we want.
Okay. Are we underserving right now as a result of not having the new software?
No, but we're not working efficiently because we're dealing with all these, everything that we have is on paper, and what we would like to move is to a paperless environment. So, I mean, that's the whole goal of this project. And then to be able also to share this information with the hospital, pharmacies, to other providers in the community, to provide you with an access, a web portal access to view your records at the health department.
And I realize that we have security concerns now, I mean, with HIPAA and what have you. But when somebody has access to an electronic medium, the damage can be done a lot quicker and a lot, are we anticipating any training as far as security, as far as protections, so that those people we're providing the services for, their rights are not?
Absolutely. I mean, that's just part of the whole process. Any aspect of this is going to, have to undergo some significant, testing.
And then one last question. Is this money that's been made available, is this a part of the healthcare, the healthcare law that is going to?
Not the one that is up for, no. I mean, it is obviously a federally funded, I can't tell you the name, but I mean, I can get it for you,
But this has nothing to do
Commissioner.
with the Affordable Health Care Act?
Not that's, no, it's not that this is going to disappear when the Supreme Court rules here in, in a month, so.
Commissioner Raymond?
I guess I have just a general question for Jen, I guess, is that if I understand this correctly, or I don't understand it correctly, is that my understanding is that this board said we were not going to do new classifications, period.
Reclassifications.
Reclassifications or classifications?
Reclassifications.
Reclassifications.
Meaning
All right.
taking
So-
existing jobs and reclassifying
So when
them.
you
This is a
have-
brand-new position.
So have we added any new positions and have done new classifications?
Yeah.
We have.
Yeah, we've done it actually in the health department.
All right.
We've added
That's what I need to know.
peer counselors.
I didn't want to light the fire and have it go down the chain. All right.
I think it's important to note here that when the health department loses a grant, the employee's gone. When the health department gets a grant, then we add the employee to put into it. And they've done very well at managing that process so that we don't have an employee that's on if an item if the grant's gone. So, and I commend them for what they're trying to do here. And, this is nothing more than document imaging like we did for the courts. It's going to put it together, put it on paper, and so that they can be able to research and be able to get the data right at their fingertips instead of having to go someplace in order to get it.
It even goes beyond that because we'll be evaluating processes, we'll be developing workflows so that, we can work in an efficient manner. And, quite honestly, a couple of our new nurse practitioners who have already worked in this environment are frustrated by the fact that they're dealing with so much paper. And so, but then at the same time, we don't have staff that we can devote to this project and make it happen. And, it's very frustrating, so.
Commissioner Henschel?
Jerry, thanks for being willing to come in and play ping pong with us on this. There's only pretty much two reasons I would vote to increase the staff. And the first one is to improve the services we provide to citizens, and the second one was to improve the efficiency of those services being provided. And I think we covered both, but could you be a little more specific? And I think you touched on a couple of them already, but repeat yourself if need be. How are we improving, and how are we improving the efficiency of delivery of services through this?
Well, the efficiency will be through the evaluation and development of the workflows, where you'll basically go into a computer screen and someone's in for an initial family planning visit. You'll go to a drop down and it'll list the various things that you would typically do in that. And and you'll click on a screen, you'll go to that screen, complete it, and move on to the next one. We won't have clients coming in and filling out volumes of paperwork. We'll be capturing their signatures on signature pads, which will go into their records. We'll eliminate, a lot of storage of documents. Ultimately, the efficiency will be that, we're going to eliminate the paper in the office and developing these workflows in a logical and efficient manner. Hopefully we're going to be able to eliminate the possibility of errors or minimize them. We'll be able to send prescriptions eventually electronically, just as when you go to a doctor's office. We'll be able to order lab tests that, maybe would go directly to Munson, so it's not, making the phone calls and all those things that take a lot of coordination and clerical and nursing time.
Have you quantified any of the increased efficiencies?
That's pretty difficult to do, but.
No estimates or anything about?
No, we have not, so.
Okay, Commissioner Gilman, then Commissioner Winkle.
Well, efficiency is a big thing, and I support that. In fact, what's the purpose of efficiencies but to ultimately make it possible to do more with less? So I'd like to amend the motion to put a 6-year sunset on the position, and at that time, we can decide whether or not the position's necessary to continue.
Do I have a second for the amendment? Okay. Motion dies for lack of a second. Commissioner Winkle?
Jerry, in our new health building, how much space do we have set aside for records retention? Seems to me there's a whole room down in the lower level, if I remember correctly, in our design.
There's storage down there. It wasn't necessarily for record retention specifically. We have a significant area, of records now, which we will continue to maintain until, there are state archival periods where we have to retain things from 3 to 5 to 7 to forever. So there's some documents that we have now that we'll continue to hold, but that, as we move down this road, that's going to shrink. Yeah.
That's what my point is.
Yeah, but there's huge storage areas but we have some areas devoted to file cabinets that could, conceivably disappear, and, we could reconfigure space in the new building as well, I suppose, eventually.
Commissioner Wheelock?
To me, it's all about the efficiency that's going to be gained, because, I know that, when it's been a while, but I went to my private doctor. He comes in with his laptop. He does this little thing, and he says, okay, you can just do the drive-through at Walgreens and pick up your prescription. It's done, you know? And there's some huge efficiencies involved in that, instead of having to stand and wait for everybody to write everything down. And the other thing that we have with the health department, you know, from my experience, is that we deal with a lot of children issues. Well, you know, I can immediately bring it up with that child, and I'm going to know how long it's been since he's been seen, whether he's had his immunizations, whether one thing after the other, and it's all going to be readily available. That's a huge efficiency. It's going to help our staff, and it is in fact going to help our community.
Okay, if there are no more comments, if we're ready to vote.
Just one more.
Go ahead.
Just, I won't support it, and just simply because there is not a sunset. We grow government, it never gets smaller. And ultimately, what is efficiency if you can't get the benefit from it? Efficiency for us would mean less cost later. How do you get less cost? You have smaller staffing doing more for the community. So I won't support it. It's not the end of the world to me, but it's from a matter of principle, I think it's appropriate that we at least consider that we shouldn't continue adding layer upon layer without considering why we want our efficiencies to be increased.
I think, you know, I would agree with you, except the fact that the mantra for the health department, when a grant goes away, the position goes away. They've been very good and very diligent at that. So when this grant money goes away, they will not keep a position in place. So that's why I feel that we don't need that kind of a term limitation, because they automatically do it within their department.
No, Jason, really, it's been like 4 times. Go ahead, Commissioner Thomas.
What if they lengthen the period of time from 6 to 7, then you're stuck at 6?
Yeah.
Well, you can make that decision at a later time, but the sunset eliminates the position.
All right, please, by roll call, please.
Commissioner Lemkool,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yeah.
Fleece,
Yes.
Wheelock,
Yes.
Gilman,
No.
Inman,
Yes.
Henschel,
Yes.
Chairman Richardson.
Yes, that motion carries. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Okay, which brings us to administration, and first item of consideration is the consideration of technology reimbursement. I assume this is for county commissioners?
Yes. I had Chris Kramer take another look at the costs associated with preparing the packets, and we found out that the numbers that we had provided, or the information that was provided in March, was overstated. We had basically looked at total cost without going into the detail and determining what was really associated with the packets. And the cost was $787 per commissioner based on that analysis. And we reviewed the current year cost and came up with a lower cost of $416 annually per commissioner. Now, despite the way that I have presented this, I do not personally have an objection to a technology reimbursement, but in all honesty, I think there's some work that needs to be done here before that would be implemented. And a primary or a main concern that I have would be based on just some initial discussions that Don Sheehan had with Bob Cooney regarding some phone considerations. The information that we would present or push out to those electronic media devices, whatever they are, is still subject to FOIA, in his opinion. So I think the first thing you need to do here is address that issue and have a policy as to use in place. And I am not the most technologically savvy person, and I know that Mr. Benda coming in is far more sophisticated in that area than I am, and I would really suggest that you defer this until he has a chance to look at this. I know that that's not what some of you want to hear, but I really think you do need to take a look at that, and I think it makes sense to have a technology reimbursement. But with the issue of FOIA, the other concern I have is that the staff time that it would take an administration and IT if different devices are used by different commissioners, and I think that's a concern. I mean, we've just talked about being efficient, and I need to be concerned that our admin staff and IT staff are working efficiently and effectively. So I'm not supporting the concept at this time, but I really think it should be revisited by someone who's far more versed in this area than I am.
Commissioner Gilman?
I'd move we defer this to the July RMA.
Support.
I don't know if that's enough time.
Motion by Gilman, support by Tony.
I would simply ask that you consider talking about technology reimbursement as part of the 2013 budget.
Yeah, that makes sense.
At that point, we'll have 7 commissioners instead of 9. That'll make a difference, and, it'll give Mr. Benda an opportunity to get here, get settled in, and it'll also, give us a better idea where our financials will be at the end of
So
this year.
defer it indefinitely until we're ready to talk about it? I mean,
I would defer it into the as part of the discussion for the 2013 budget.
I'll amend it.
So you're
Everybody's
offering an amendment,
recommendation.
basically.
I would amend my motion.
You're okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
So who was the seconder, Larry?
Yes.
So the motion now is to defer discussion of this until the 2013 budget later this summer. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yay.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Please?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Gilman?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
No.
Lemkool?
Yes.
Yes.
Chairman Richardson?
I'm sorry, I didn't give you an opportunity to speak on it. I wasn't sure you were raising your hand or not.
That's all right, it isn't going to make a difference, clock's ticking.
Okay, all right. That's fine. Okay, next item is the 2% funds of Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians. And I can just preface this by saying that I think we have already heard from at last count, I think it was 15 nonprofits who are wondering when we're going to schedule our 2% review hearings, which we've usually scheduled by now and haven't yet. So with that, Dean, I think I'll let you take it over here.
Well, I'm really not sure what to do with this. Since I last reported this issue to the board, I had one additional discussion with an individual from the state, and my concern is that they weren't going to press the local tribe, the Grand Traverse Band, for an answer to a letter that they had sent to them suggesting that their process may not be exactly in agreement with the consent judgment that's in place. I did ask for a copy of that letter, and they respectfully declined to provide that to me. My concern with this is primarily the other aspect or the approach that the state has taken in addressing this. And this is a division that's under the local, it's under Treasury. I believe it's the Michigan Gaming Division. They were also talking to auditors. In fact, they were talking to a governmental expert that is the principal with Raymond who signs off on our audit. And the reason they called me initially was because of the fact that they were concerned about the dollar amount that Grand Traverse County was receiving. In effect, when they did their audit, Grand Traverse County came up because we were above some materiality threshold. So they were wondering why so many dollars were coming to Grand Traverse County. So in the discussion I had with that individual, in fact it was 2 individuals, I said, well, we're basically receiving funds and then passing them on to the ultimate recipient. And I think therein lies their concern, and that's why they also talked to the folks at Local Audit and Finance, because they feel this is, they want to address this issue from 2 different fronts. They addressed it directly with the Grand Traverse Band, in a written correspondence, but they're also talking to the auditors of the entities that are involved in this transaction. So I believe it would be prudent for us to sit down with the Grand Traverse Band and have a discussion as to how this process works and why it's evolved to this point. I'm not entirely clear on the history, but I've always heard that we were under a different pact. I've heard that in this chambers many times, but based on the document that was provided to me from the folks at the state, specifically paragraph 8, which starts on page 69 in your packet, the references to local units of state government. And I don't know how the interpretation has gotten to the point where, payments are being made to entities that are not, in my opinion, local units of state government. But with that being said, my concern is that the folks at Local Audit and Finance eventually take a look at this, and we have to address this from our auditor's perspective. So I think it would be wise for us to engage some kind of a discussion with the Grand Traverse Band as to how this process works. And as Commissioner Richardson has indicated, we have 15 applications in, and I certainly don't want to be the person that upsets the process at this point. So if you decide to continue with the process that we've been involved in, you do need to basically assign 3 to 4 commissioners to review those applications to move them on.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Well, I'm sure as most of you will recall, I've been pretty vocal about being opposed to this process for a long time. That being said, I've also chaired the committee to do the interview process for the last 5 or 6 years. I was very concerned in 2009 when the tribe came along with the idea that all of the money was going to be paid to Grand Traverse County, and the county was in turn going to distribute the money. And we were fiscally responsible to make sure and audit that money was spent as it was, in fact, applied for. Because all we get, and Dean can show them to you, is letters from these organizations. Yes, they spent the money for what they applied for it for. That's about as close as documentation we're going to get that it in fact did happen. I certainly think it's appropriate for us to sit down and have discussion with tribal leadership about this issue. The one thing that I'm still not sure about, and I've read through this consent agreement a number of times since I got it, is there another document out there somewhere? Because we've always been told that the compact between Grand Traverse Band and the state of Michigan was different than the other 6.
Right.
That's not what I read in this stipulation of this consent agreement. So my question is there another document out there that may in fact be different?
Well, there is, and I got a copy of this last week, and unfortunately it wasn't included, it wasn't included in the pack because I didn't ask it to be, but this is a consent decree,
right,
which was dated, again, August 20th, 1993, but there's also a thing called a compact between the tribes, and it isn't just Grand Traverse. Grand Traverse is one of about 7 or 8 tribes and the state of Michigan. It is also dated August 20th, 1993, and I read through all of that a couple days ago, and there's no discussion of the 2% money. It talks about various things, but what it does say in this compact, and actually I guess they have to erect a sign at the casino that says this is not regulated by the state of Michigan, and the state of Michigan has no right to regulate what goes on.
So that being said, I certainly, and the other thing is the compact that's in place expires in 2013.
Well, not necessarily. You need to get a copy of that compact from Chris Kramer, okay?
Okay, I'll have
It says
to get that.
it may expire if the parties to it, of course, we're not a party to it, if the parties ask for it to be renegotiated. But there's very specific rules on that, too, so.
But I guess at this point, I'm in favor of notifying all of the applicants that we will forward all of their applications to the Grand Traverse Band. but notify the Grand Traverse Band that Grand Traverse County will not be the fiscal agent for the distribution of the money. Because as I read the information that's been provided from the Treasury Department, we are, could very well be on the hook for, if not being improper, possibly even to the point that we were illegal in the way that we are handling these funds. Because we are receiving the monies, and when money is received from any entity made with a check made to Grand Traverse County, it is then public money. And public money cannot be distributed to some of these organizations that we are distributing funds to. So I would make the motion that we notify all applicants that their applications will be forwarded to the Grand Traverse Band, and notify the Grand Traverse Band that Grand Traverse County will not be the fiscal agent for this round of grants.
Support.
I have a motion by Wheelock, support by Thomas.
Well, I guess I'm not prepared to vote for a motion tonight. I think it would be more appropriate to ask for a copy of the letter from the tribe if the state isn't going to give us a copy of the letter. And two, to engage the new chairman, Al, and with the new county administrator, perhaps Bob Cooney, myself, and maybe another commissioner or whatever, and sit down and have a discussion on this. The last thing I would like to have happen is a disruption of the application process because of a call from the state, which they have no intention, basically, of enforcing at this point. Maybe this would be the last time we would do it, but I would prefer to have a discussion with those with the tribal member, the new chairman, and get Cooney involved and get a copy of the letter, get more information. And meanwhile, I don't see a problem in us interviewing and ranking like we did before, because that doesn't address the fiscal part, because that was the second part that Sonny always said, if we're going to get involved with the application process, at least give us an opportunity to rank them. So I would still go with that process and finish with the fiscal agent issue once we complete the discussions with the tribe and with Bob Cooney and whomever. So I would just leave everything in place and then discuss the fiscal agent piece once we have an opportunity to get Dave Benda here and talk with the tribal manager.
Commissioner Gilman.
All right, little history. If I can pull this together, it's a little fuzzy, but early 1980s, the tribe was federally recognized, the first in the state after, decades, of course, of not being officially recognized by the federal government. Poker tables in a garage, blackjack, then machines, then extra casino environments, and then Turtle Creek and so on. In the 90s, in around 93 was when it started to really hit the fan. And then the other concerns, of course, the casinos up north, they had their interests and they were getting involved. They were fighting for recognition. The compact, they had their own compact prior to their own agreement is what it was. And there was a fight in the end prior to Engler leaving where once the Detroit casinos were allowed, because they were involving the other casinos, and they were putting the money up for them, essentially, they're guaranteeing the Detroit casinos. This tribe did two things. They got the referendum passed for you have to get approval to allow new casinos in the state by a certain vote. Measure has to go before the voters.
That never happened.
And then they also claimed at the time that they did not have to pay the 2% that they had agreed to. Now, somewhere between then and now, that's changed and they decided to do so anyway. But there is a different package that involves them, and it would be interesting to see from them, and I think it'd be worthwhile, you and I at least,
Because we have a committee set up.
We have a committee set up, and maybe it's time we activate that and sit down and find out what those differences are.
Right.
And where their stand is on this.
I agree with you.
I guess the one concern that I have is, I believe the application date for these is the end of June. I don't see this happening. That we're going to get these meetings with the tribe and get this process so as that the people that have made application can properly make, be within that June timeframe for the distribution of funds.
Well, we can still, have the meetings and review the applications and make recommendations at the same time while we try to get some clarification on whether we should even be handling the funds. And the other question is, again, if you read the consent decree, it doesn't, first of all, it doesn't talk about 2%, it talks about local governments getting the amount of money that would be equal to the ad valorem taxes, but, it's not like we go in and, tax assess, the casinos to find out how much money they should be paying to whom. So, and I don't know where the 2% comes from, because it's not in the consent decree and it's not in the compact either. So, there's a whole lot of questions, and I don't, at this point in time, it seems to me that we ought to just at least move forward with the process for the benefit of the nonprofits who are going to be really upset.
Well, and that's why I read, my first part was that we forward, as you will remember, up until the last 2 years when they've allowed us to rank them, I've always voted to send all of them without comment to the tribe. And I think that's what we should do this time, is send all of the applications to the tribe. But, I don't see how Grand Traverse County should be the fiscal agent in this thing. When I read this thing that specifically says that 2% money is to be paid to governmental units to offset, governmental costs, services provided to the tribes for the impacts associated with the existence and locations of tribal casinos in its vicinity, and further, however, out of said aggregate payment, each local unit shall receive no less than the amount equivalent to the ad valorem property tax.
Right.
And Grand Traverse County, as an entity, receives very, very small piece of 2% of money that is paid out of this so-called profits of the electronic gaming.
Herb, and then Larry.
The first part of your motion, I don't have a problem with. I don't want to start a disagreement with the tribe and us. We've always had a pretty good relationship over the years. And I just have a problem telling them we're not going to be interested in taking their money and then distributing it when we haven't had a good discussion with them about that. I'm very concerned about that. We've been doing it for a number of years.
Up until 2009, we never touched the money. Up until 2009, we never touched the money. The money was issued from the Grand Traverse Band to those nonprofits.
So, yeah, I just think we need to have that discussion before we start passing motions to do something in that direction. I'm real concerned about that.
Commissioner Inman?
Well, I'm aware that like the tribe down in Mount Pleasant does something different, and they actually have a community committee made up of elected officials, and the money gets circumvented to them, and then they make the decision on how it should be allocated, whether nonprofits or the government projects or whatever. So I know there's a variety of ways that the 2% money is being handled within tribes within the state of in Michigan, and several of them are different. I'd rather not push the panic button. I would rather move forward, as a couple of us have suggested, and just say, let's accept the applications. I don't have a problem not interviewing them if that's what you don't want to do again, and ranking them. I mean, we can just take them and package them and send them to them, but we still need to have that meeting with the tribe, along with a copy of the letter, and to consult with Bob Cooney and who else we may need to do with Dave Benda, and come up with a conclusion of how we want to handle the fiscal part of it. I think we can do that.
Commissioner Gilman?
Commissioner Wheelock is right about our involvement and where we're at. However, for them to abide by their rules of the compact, they, according to this, each local unit of government shall receive no less comment in the Section 8. That puts them in a position where, I mean, are we stopping them from performing their part of it? Or, I mean, and I agree with you. I think when we're handling the fiscal duties of this, it comes in and it goes out from here, and we have oversight. We definitely need to talk about this more. I mean, this is not something that can just go on like this.
I have a question for you, Sonny. So it was the tribe that wanted us to start ranking?
Yes.
Okay.
In 2009, Grand Traverse Band sent notice that they expected Grand Traverse County to, in fact, receive the 2% monies and distribute them, and be fiscally responsible for the auditing of that funds. And that's been a really tough part for me, and I think it's
impossible.
tough for Dean, because all we get from these organizations, and I don't want to pick on anyone, whether it be, if you remember the last go-around, American Red Cross received a sizable donation from the Grand Traverse Band for a program being operated in Kalkaska and Antrim County. But that money came through Grand Traverse County. Why? Oh, it shouldn't even have been here.
I mean, we're not auditing the nonprofits that are getting.
But we are supposed to be, according to their directions when they started sending the money to us. Up until 2009, that money was distributed directly to the nonprofit agents by a check from Grand Traverse Band to the American Red Cross or Trigger Boxing or whatever the organization was. But in 2009, the tribe made a determination that the money was going to be sent, and I think it came because of pressure by the state, that the agreement stipulates that the money will be distributed back to the local units of government. And they've always said that all of the applications had to be endorsed by a local unit, whether it be the county or whether it be by the township. Some of the townships have passed some of these forward too. But the fact is, in 2009, the tribe made the determination that the money would be distributed to the county, and then the county would be responsible for the distribution to the designated agencies. And at that point, I said, okay, then we get to have something to say about who gets what they get. And he said, well, rank them. But it didn't matter. If you go back and you look at who they distributed the money to, it didn't, there isn't any more of them that we put in the top third that got money than the ones that were in the bottom third that got money. They still chose who they wanted the money to go to and what dollar amount they wanted the money distributed to those people. But, by passing the money through Grand Traverse County, then all of a sudden they are in compliance with this consent agreement that says that the money has to be distributed back to the local units of government, which they were not in compliance with, and they'd been put on notice that they weren't in compliance with. So now they distribute the money back to Grand Traverse County, and we're responsible. The problem is when Grand Traverse County receives funds from anywhere, it becomes public money. Public money cannot be distributed to some of these nonprofit organizations and other, whether they're nonprofits or how you want to call them, the public money cannot be distributed to those agencies. It's that simple. It's illegal for us to distribute money to some of those agencies. But by the tribe passing the money through the county, they were compliant with the consent agreement that said the money had to go back to the local unit of government. But what they did is they put Grand Traverse County, in violation of the law. And they made us responsible to audit that money, which we have no possible way to do. And all of you know, I've been very opposed to this whole 2% money for a long, long time. But yet I've been actively participating in the process. The 2 years I was board chairman, we must have met at least a half a dozen times with the tribal leadership trying to deal with 2% allocations and payment in lieu of taxes. And we never got anywhere.
Well, I'm not going to vote for your motion, not because I don't think you're right, because I think you probably are right, but I do think that we need to sit down and have some serious discussions with some lawyers and so forth.
Absolutely.
And we still have time, before the tribe sends us a check for this stuff, I think you may be right that we may not want to allow them to basically wash the money through us, which is what they're doing, really. But I'm just not sure that I'm ready to vote that way tonight without getting a better sense of exactly, where we should be on this.
I have to agree with you. Dean, my question is, will this create an audit exception for us when we get audited?
Not for the year that we're going to submit currently, because the auditors have not raised the question, but I believe since they've talked to auditors, they will be looking at this when they audit 2012.
Okay. Mr. Emmett?
Well, Dennis and I have had numerous discussions on this, because we used to meet with the tribal people, the chair and maybe another representative, and then at time to time, we meet together as a full board. And Dennis had extensive discussions with them regarding this. And it was just Dennis and I assumption that, as Sonny has described, I think accurately, that they were doing things outside the pact in terms of distributing the money, and then decided to come to Grand Traverse to have an appearance of trying to comply with the pact, because it was going through a governmental agency. And what we allowed to do as a county commission is allowed them to make the decision on the final distribution. And that's what I think the state has the issue with, is that, that in other communities, like Dennis told me, he said, sooner or later, the state's going to catch up with this tribe up here, and they're going to make them do what everybody else is doing downstate with this 2% money. And that's going to be requiring, that's what other communities are doing. I can't say this one is going to be required to, but they're going to have to form an outside community of board members, and they're going to receive the money, they're going to do the applications, they're going to do the interviews, and they're going to do the distribution, and the tribe doesn't have a say as to where the money goes. Right. That's what Dennis told me. So I think it's just been, something that we expected to come sooner or later, and it's here now. We just need to get a copy of the letter, have the meeting with the tribe chairman, and then let's get this thing moved forward in the right direction.
Could you reread the motion, please?
I think I have it right. Notify all applicants that their applications will be forwarded to the tribe, and then also notify the tribe that these applications will be forwarded to them at that time.
And I think his addition was we would not be the fiscal agent.
And we would not be the fiscal agent, no.
All right. Everybody understand the motion? By roll call, please.
Commissioner Fleece?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Gilman?
Yes.
Inman?
Nope.
Henschel?
No.
Lemkool?
No.
Thomas?
Yes.
Chairman Richardson?
No. Motion fails 4-4. Could we have a motion for the first part of that, which is just to...
Mr. Chairman, I would move to forward all applications received by Grand Traverse County to the Grand Traverse Band without preference.
Support.
Okay, I have a motion by Wheelock, support by Fleece. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And doesn't require a motion. I'll just call a meeting of the local tribal committee together, and we'll try to have a meeting with Dave Benda and the new chairman.
Yeah, and pull in, any member of the county
Right. And
board
might-
that you feel is going to be helpful in
right.
trying to resolve this issue. I mean,
Right.
the tribe has been very helpful on a number of things, and I don't wish to anger them, but, we need to figure out how to resolve this issue, because
Right.
it's not going to be better.
I'm certainly historically very pleased with the partnership we've had with the Grand Traverse Band, and I speak highly of that partnership. But that being said, I believe this 2% money has been mishandled, and they've now, I think we've now been put on notice that Grand Traverse County has been put in a position where we may be acting illegally and participating the way they've chosen to do it.
Okay, then, moving right along. Vacancies on boards. Two of our less visible boards, Hospital Finance Authority and Farmland Preservation Board. And Dean, I guess we do have some applicants for the vacancies, is that correct?
That is correct. And did Chris mention that we also have vacancies on the Community Corrections Board? There's 2 vacancies on that board as well.
No, she didn't mention that. Okay, so what I think I'd like to do is I'd like to form an ad hoc committee to interview candidates for these three boards, which would be the Farmland Preservation Board, the Hospital Finance Authority, and the Community Corrections Board.
I would be happy to be on the Farmland Preservation Board. I chair that board.
Yeah, we're going to have one ad hoc for all three
Oh,
boards.
one ad hoc for both? Okay.
Yeah, because we're not talking about a lot of
All right.
applicants.
All right.
Okay, so
Could you get-
Larry Inman has volunteered, Herb Lemkool. Anybody? Sonny Wheelock?
Put Chris on there, she's not here.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely, there you go. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask, as commissioners, think about these ad hoc committees and think about these boards. As part of this discussion, we talk about whether or not there's still value to have these boards.
Yeah.
Both for the community and for this county. Because the fact is, there's, if my memory's right, there's like 126 positions that we either appoint county commissioners to board members or liaisons to. We cannot do that with 7 commissioners next year, guys. It's not possible. And as we encourage more people to become involved, it's just going to become that much more difficult. And, some of these boards meet very rarely, and I'm not even sure whether they, really conduct much business when they do meet. I think we really need to look at all of these boards and commissions, whether they truly have value to our community and to the county board. Because if they don't, we shouldn't have them. And at least from my perspective, and I've been a little bit loud about it, is if you're going to send me as a liaison and I don't have a vote, I don't have anything to say about how they're going to do it, I'm not going. I don't have the time. It's that simple. If I cannot, if you're asking me to go somewhere and meet with a board or meet with a group of people, and I don't have a vote in making the decisions of that board, I don't have the time to go.
All right, do I have a motion then to, again, this is just to form the ad hoc to pick up.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a
people, not to
motion
pick
that
ourselves.
ad hoc committee for interviews for Farmland Preservation Board, Hospital Finance Authority, and Community Corrections. And the members will be Inman, Wheelock, Max Bauer, and Lemkool.
Okay, do I have a second?
Support.
Support by Henschel. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Brings us to the administrator's update.
Just have one item, and this was, Jerry had asked me to mention to the commissioners before you get an email. Sarah Shimmick from the Health Department would like to contact you regarding the Family Oasis baby tent at the Cherry Festival
She already
to
has.
volunteers. So that's a public service announcement to the commissioners. You're going to get an email.
Commissioner
if you
Inman's
have
going to
it.
go help change baby diapers.
I've never done
And
one.
Jen reminded me.
It's easy.
Just to let you know, I did it last year, and I think, Jason, you did it last year. All it is just sitting, you don't change the diapers, Larry, you don't have to worry about that. So
Yeah, they're
just
looking
keeping-
for assistance with the
Yeah.
project. I'm not sure what
They
your
just want
exact
somebody to
assignments
monitor
would be.
the tent.
And then,
And it's very rewarding.
It's amazing how many people go.
Love
It really works really well, and it's amazing how many people don't bring diapers.
Yep.
Really?
All right, cleaning equipment for their kids, they bring them out to the thing, and they expect to be there 4 or 5 hours, and they've got 3-week-old and 2-month-old babies, and they expect, we have extra diapers, and we actually provide a clean environment for them to change their kids, so it works out very well.
Yep.
and if I could, I have, Jen is going to provide an update on the health officer interviews.
Interviews are scheduled with 5 candidates on Monday, June 25th. The panel is myself, Dave Benda, Dr. Collins, who's at the health department currently, and Linda, Yarrow, I think is how you say the last name. She's from the Northern Michigan Department of Public Health and has volunteered to be on our panel as well. So.
Good.
Is she the acting health officer for, isn't the one out of Wexford County, we have one if we have something, what did I read about that? That we had, if there was a health issue, that Jerry was not an actual health officer that we had to use
Somebody
somebody.
was available.
Oh,
for
Somebody else
yeah.
was available.
assistance.
It might be
may
her.
I can't
can't
remember who it
remember
is, but I
either
think
her.
it was a person out of Wexford, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
That's all you have, Dean?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to unfinished business. I don't believe there is any. New business? Don't see any. Brings us to second public comment. Now's opportunity for public comment. Seeing none. Commissioner committee reports. Yes, sir.
Boardman River Nature Fest is June 23rd on the 10th, from 10 till 3 o'clock at the Nature Education Reserve. Would encourage anybody who want to come and bring their kids, bring the family, and learn more about what the Nature Education Reserve is all about and all the programs that they are providing. That is June 23rd from 10 o'clock until 3 o'clock. Also, the Park and Recreation Network meeting is Thursday, that's tomorrow night at 6 o'clock at the Civic Center. They're continually looking at whether or not they should have a Park and Recreation Authority, so they're still working on that. And then also, I just wanted to say thanks to NACO, the National Association of Counties, that the Conservation District received a grant for $2,300 for a new winch that Steve Largent uses to pull the debris out of the river when it blocks the river. And so now he can carry that and a chainsaw. It's like a 50cc Honda, it's less than 50 pounds, and he can carry both of them, go in and be able to take care of the problems that happen along the river. So I just wanted to say thank you to NACO for providing that grant, and it's great to know that some of our organizations are utilizing that organization to get grants to be able to do, continue the good work that they do.
Good. Okay. Commissioner Gilman.
East Bay Township, they just finished up their audit, and they had their presentation Monday. They re-upped their planning appointments, and also the contentious Corridor Improvement Authority was...
Did anybody vote for it?
No. No, in fact, the Township Supervisor Mansfield, who is also planner and had initiated the process, he actually made the recommendation in the end that due to the subjective disagreement, he was going to recommend that...
The hostilities.
Yes.
Let it go.
Anyway, so that's that process was stopped cold, and I believe in general the property owners along that particular route were quite satisfied with the result.
Any notices and or announcements?
Just a reminder to everyone, June 14th, tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock,
Yep.
we have a joint meeting with the Commission on Aging Board.
Yes, which will be in the second floor training room, which is back in the southwest corner of the Government Center.
That's where it's gonna be, is over there?
Yes.
And it will not be televised or won't be recorded?
I don't know, I believe they were going to record it.
Recorded, won't it?
Yeah, I believe they
They
had
have
plans on
recording back
recording
there?
it. but-
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I would probably be remiss also if I should probably keep you up to date on this a little bit more. With the Tattle Library for the Blind issue, as it appears at this point, it appears we're going to be going to a model where most of the expense or most of the benefit from the state is going to be still available to the library. We will keep a presence here.
Good.
It's possible we shrink the representation down to the immediate 8 counties surrounding Grand Traverse, and rather than the greater area. Another thing of interest that will go before the board possibly this next week, next Thursday, not tomorrow, but next Thursday. The other thing that's going to go before the board is, for those of you who are interested, the Teen Services Center is going to get a major upgrade, and it was from a gift that we received several years ago, and it's just kind of been sitting in limbo, and it was specifically earmarked for that, per the gifter, the grantor.
When are they going to do the remodeling of the entrance?
Well, yeah, towards the end of the year. I mean, the efficiency upgrades are going to happen. It's going to be towards the end of the summer. Well, it'll be after summer, but there will be a major facilities upgrade. Literally, set your book down and you've checked it out. And, I mean, that's how easy. Bring your book in, you turned it in. Set 5 books down, it'll check them all out at once.
Good.
This is cool stuff. And you talk about efficiencies, that'll get people in and out, and again, hopefully it allows us to reduce an FTE or something, down the road, just so we can continue providing other advancements, and as our goal is, one of the goals is to get Blair up and running at some point. But boy, every time we turn around, there's something else we gotta, deal with.
That's what we've heard for years.
I know.
This year,
It's real.
This year, we will provide Tattle, through the millage, $300,000 in 1 year, just Blair alone. It's a lot of money.
I know.
And 2016 is coming.
Yep. In Peninsula Township, it's about $450,000.
$550.
Yeah. I mean, so
$550.
there's a great deal of
You know what I'd like to see you address the Tattle Board with, and I spoke, I don't remember what meeting, but quite a while ago. There was today, not too long ago, when traffic fines and such, the fine went to the library. The cost stayed with the court. The courts saw the opportunity. Today, we'll just pick on a stop sign and say it's $100 fine and cost. Well, it's $95
Yep.
cost, $5 fine. So the libraries are really missing a good hunk of change. And I think they ought to talk to the legislature about that and have the courts mandated to at least split it 50-50.
it should be consistent.
Well, yeah.
You would think.
But if you look, that's exactly what's went on. They stole the money. And then I think we ought to send Sonny to school.
Good luck with that.
We need an Optimist school, John.
I've already been kicked out of there.
And he's running 2 shifts.
But he says here tonight, and I would never have thought I'd hear a Wheelock say that, it is not possible. Well,
Yeah.
Sonny, all you gotta do is work a little harder, and the 7 of you remaining can handle those.
That's what I was thinking. We could get this job done.
It's full-time, we're part-time.
Just more meetings, that's all. All right.
And there's no need for a closed session, is there?
No.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Aye.
BPW in the morning at 9 o'clock,
Thank you.
for those interested in
The septic.
septage.
All right, all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
I-